So what's the difference between subjectivism, ethical subjectivism, and ethical relativism? Remember?
Subjectivism is based on person to person, and relativism is culture.
Yeah. And what say we what's based on? That's a better question. So when you say it's based on.
Like an individual's world, or like consensus on moral things.
So what's the standard that makes something correct for a person that subscribes to subjectivism? What makes something morally correct?
You approve of it and you're
Good. And then relativism? Yeah. Right. Okay, good. You nailed it. Let's go through the names that participated. It'll help if we do the, yeah, it's easier for me to, because it's in alphabetical order. Go ahead. Right here? What, sorry, it's hard. It's always hard. Oh, yeah, good. That's what I like. Can you tell me the letter? Go ahead. Did I miss anybody else? Yes, that's right. Okay, good. So that is the standard. Just like you said, an act is morally acceptable if you approve of it and, right, your commitments allow it and you disapprove of it. So I guess something with that, they would say, well, there still is a moral, like, you should be a principled person by the way that you set up. So you don't want to go against your own principles, I guess. Is that what that, if my commitments allow, what do you think that means? I mean, I guess, is there anything that like, well, I've changed my moral principles. I changed my mind. I guess that wouldn't be wrong either, right? If you're a subjectivist.
They're saying that that wouldn't be considered correct. They don't have a way of allowing moral progress.
That's, yeah, I want to get to that. I thought that was an interesting argument. Okay, and then again, everything's pretty much the same, but it's just at the level of society And which is an interesting. So my wife told me she always like in the morning she'll like pull up Twitter and like show me all these like these people's arguments. And so she was like, you got to hear what this person's saying. So it related to the ethics class. So do you know about Texas banned abortions and everybody's losing their mind? So this lady gets on and says, in response to somebody that, well, it's murder and you shouldn't. She's like, if it's legal, it's not murder. And I was like, whoa, wait. But it was like, well, there goes your criticism of Hitler. Like, just make something like it's murder. Well, let's put it into law and then it won't be murder, right? So that's what's kind of cool about the ethics class is you can kind of think through these sorts of things, but that is a relativist argument, isn't it? Murder, we would all accept is morally wrong. So how do you fix that? Well, you could just become a relativist and say, well, wait a minute, morality is defined by society. So if we pass that into law, then it's no longer murder, right? Because society determines what's right and wrong. So there's just kind of a contemporary example that identify that, yeah, that person was probably, whether they knew it or not, was probably a cultural relativist. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yes.
I just have like this kind of like a question, I guess, about that. So like, you have Texas students on kind of thing with the banning abortion and stuff like that. What I don't understand is why do people who don't live in Texas get so freaking angry about something like that?
Yeah, what do you guys think?
Like,
So somebody could say, don't move to Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it depends on your view of whether you're allowed to get angry at it. I mean, if you're subjectivist, you can't get angry at it. If you're relativist, you can't get angry at it because you have to know that they're who's making decisions are right anyway. But like if you're an objective morality, then you can.
Yeah, you could be like, well, hey, that's just the cultural relativism, Texas. Like, who are we to judge? Yeah, you could use.
Looking at it politically, that's the first like Supreme Court decision that sort of challenged Roe v. Wade. So in that sense, it allows, it opens a pathway for other states to start being able.
That's what they're actually, and it's not Roe v. Wade. Now, the precedent was, it's a newer, somebody help me out, look that up. If that's what would be actually, whatever the newer, but it's no longer Roe v. Wade, but that's what sets a legal precedent so that other states could, so it's a threat to, you're absolutely right. That's why they're getting upset. Let's see. Well, what does the author say? What do you think is so appealing about ethical relativism or subjectivism? Like, I find the majority of people that I encounter, let's say, outside of philosophy, I don't think I've ever met like a philosopher that's an ethical or moral relativist. Like, it's usually people that haven't been exposed to ethics. Like, as we'll see, like as Schaefer goes, is kind of the objections. The people in philosophy and ethics know what the objections are. So I've never met anybody, but usually most people that I meet, common guy on the street, right, have some version of that. So what do you think's appealing, just psychologically? Yeah.
I guess you can never be wrong in your own mind because you say, oh, that's just my morals or that's just how I feel, pretty much.
Let me give you your points.
I think a lot of people like to think that way because it's comfortable, because they're like, nobody's wrong, nobody's right, so it's okay. But people just don't stick to it because they think that everything's right. So what happens is you get people that think that everybody can have their opinions, but then they argue against it anyway. So.
Last name.
Burgess with a B.
Last name. Did you know your names after a famous philosopher? Yeah, you want me to show you? So I have to get out of this to like pull up a, it's ridiculous. What if I do a new window? Ah. I won.
Is it cut man or cut down?
Yeah, how do you spell yours? There.
That.
American philosopher, mathematician, and computer scientist. I met him. There you go. Yes.
I think with like relativism, they give up like some of the responsibility of having to choose what's moral and not. So it's more comfortable with it. Kind of going with those that don't have to choose what's moral to them.
Who else? I saw somebody, let me give you your points, but somebody else had their hand up.
In both situations, you get kind of cut and dry rules for what you can follow. It's always clearly defined on what you can do, what you can't do.
Oh, that's interesting. Good. Last names, please. And then he starts us off by saying, this is to your point, actually. I'm going to go back to the point I was going to make. On page 296, moral infallibility. You're infallible. You're like the Pope speaking ex cathedra. You're like, well, in my magisterium in my head, I ruled in my ecumenical council in ex cathedra, and it's dogma. Moral infallibility, whereas outside of relativism and cultural relativism, subjectivism, there's fallibility. You could get it wrong. But these, and maybe that's appeal for people. How can I be wrong if I'm the one that defines it? Good point. Psychologically speaking, he writes, the appeal, where did I have a note on this? Maybe it's in this section. Seems tolerant, open-minded. You don't say that another person's wrong because they are what defines what's right for them. So that seems good, right? That could be an appeal. Always when you want to find the note that you put on there, you can never. What other things could be appealing about? What does this mean, scientifically respectable? I don't get that.
I was gonna ask.
Okay, yeah, please.
But I guess another thing with like ethical relative
Relativism.
Like some people maybe they don't like the idea of like moral progress and much like your society's morals are just set in stone. So like on the topic of like abortion, before Texas did that, it was just kind of set in stone, like it's legal, but people can look down upon it. I guess to like kind of go with that.
Last name.
Vegan.
With what letter?
And F on number 18.
Yeah, what else could we say? By the way, I don't get this. Scientifically respectable. What do you think that means? Why would cultural relativism or subjectivism be scientifically respectable?
Is it because people's morals aren't scientifically determined? So it's more qualitative data than quantitative. So you can't really right or wrong with morality?
I don't know. I actually don't know why the author states this. So it's a good, yes.
Maybe it deals with facts, like, scientific method has a certain way of doing things, and morality, there's a certain process that you know,
Well, I'm wondering, maybe piggybacking off one you're saying is that it's just descriptive. It's like, this is what people believe. They believe that they're right morally, and that could be scientifically studied. Whereas, how would you scientifically study something that would be independent of? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. By the way, let me get your last name. Okay, go ahead, sir.
It'd be like taking surveys of like how people feel about certain subjects, things how they're trying to justify it as scientific. So
Maybe, yeah, that's, did I give you your points? All right, let's move on. Let's see. It's egalitarian. Everyone or every culture is a good judge of morality as anyone else. And it easily explains how we acquire moral knowledge. Okay. This is kind of the infallibilism. Well, what's the implications? The implications of ethical truth is determined by personal opinion or cultural ideas, then it's impossible for one's personal ethical opinions or cultural ideas to ever be mistaken. And I brought this up last class, right? That about the in Nuremberg trials, how they actually appealed to the like, what do you mean crimes against, like, that's our culture, like that's. So obviously, and that's interesting in law because then you'd have to go, I mean, law operates by precedent. So there's no kind of like, is there a universal court prior to like Nuremberg or something like that? An international, like, how does that even work? Like, what do you appeal to? You don't typically use the same kind of legal procedures. For example, what state in the United States has a different legal structure than the rest of the? What's that? No. We're gonna, not Texas.
because I know that they were trying to separate, like, there's a different areas.
but in the Midwest, Alaska, Hawaii, California.
Smithville, Louisiana.
Louisiana, really?
Why is that?
It has why am I blanking on the name? It's called it's based on common law. So it actually has a different legal structure than, there's a name that I'm looking for. Isn't that interesting? Total different legal structure than, and it kind of goes into the differences here. You could look up the effective differences, great differences between Louisiana civil law and common law found in all other American states. Yeah, I don't think they use precedent. Isn't that interesting?
Can you give like an example? What would be something that?
So if you got in trouble for something, Louisiana, how is that?
I mean, for the most part, it's probably the same, but it's common laws based on kind of more like deeper cultural kind of things set in like a community throughout their history. Whereas So like normal civil law would be, like it said, let's see if it says right here. See, a single court decision can provide a sufficient foundation for a stare decisis. However, a series of adjudicated cases. So here it has to do with civil law has its own respect for established precedent, the doctrine of jurisprudence.
Kind of looks like they don't have juries. Let's just run off judges.
I need to find a better example of. What if I put versus Montana law? Why did I have it still misspelled? Am I still misspelling it? I don't know what's going on with me today.
This is I after. The before the end.
Oh, here. Whatever, I'm just. Napoleonic, so it's traced into. There's another word that I'm looking at. So if I'm gonna look up common law. I might put another. What's that? Yeah, versus, let's see what this says. Yeah. Common law is a law that's derived from judicial decisions instead of statutes. Anyways, I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's interesting. We'll look at the differences between that, but I can't remember why we eventually brought that up. Something to do with ethical relativism. Let's move on here. Well, that's another implication. Nothing's intrinsically valuable. To be intrinsically valuable means that somebody be valuable independent of what you think. So again, I'm trying to think of an example. Like money, like paper money is not intrinsically valuable, right? It's only what if we desire and put worth in an agreement that like, oh, we'll use this to purchase other things as a currency and stuff like that. But I don't think there's anything intrinsically valuable, independent of what we agree to use that about paper with green ink on it, right? That would be an example. So if ethical relativism or subjectivism is true, then you are the one, or your culture is the one that attributes value to, just like the issue with the money. And therefore, you can't actually say that anything is intrinsically good in itself or valuable. Because of this, it makes no sense to ask whether we are valuing the right things. Well, you are your own determiner of what's right. So you can never be wrong. What are those billboards that used to or phrases that we hear that are kind of reminiscent of ethical relativism?
Have you ever Better Call Saul? He's like, even if you're wrong, you're right.
Oh, that's great. You should do whatever you want to do, right, in life. Sounds nice. Give me another one that would be kind of things that we heard kind of growing up that now that you think about it, going over this, like that's probably a relativistic position. Oh, I know one. You should be free to do whatever you want. Now, don't tell that to Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer's mom's like, Jeffrey, you just be you. That's another. Jeffrey Dahmer says, all right. You should do whatever you want. Be you, Jeffrey. Right? Be all you can be.
Follow your heart.
Follow your heart. Give me some other. Do what makes you happy. This is, it's kind of crazy if you think about it, like if people actually like followed through on that. Like, well, I want this and I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna do it. So a lot of these things, and this is what's good about philosophy. What did I say philosophy does? Most of us live on the surface, superficial kind of meanings and thinking about the world, about ourselves, our relation to one another, what's right and wrong. But philosophy begins in ancient Greece, and we all know Socrates, and he says, it's the examined life. Examine everything. Go. There's the world of appearances and the world as it really is. And if you think about that, like even science has that, right? There's the world the way it appears, and then the world as it really is. And it's hard to get down to the bottom, right? Science, like we have to, we get microscopes and I mean, think about like the advances we made in genetics. That's not the way the world actually appears. That may be the way the world really is. And it takes hard work to get down to the bottom of things. So when we gave all those examples of kind of things that we hear every day, it sounds nice on the surface, doesn't it? The uncritical, the unexamined. But when you start to think through, and this is what your author is doing, you're like, well, wait a minute, there's some issues with that. And that should apply to anything in life, like sales pitches, right? Isn't the whole idea of sales or advertising? Keep you on the surface. It appears really nice. But our job is like, well, is it really? Is this a good deal? Is it true what they're saying? Is it going to be a problem if I buy this guy's product? So you can think about philosophy that way and the things that people are saying. They're selling me something. Can I trust that? Is it a good product? Is it going to be a lemon or produce problems or something like that? So I think thinking through this stuff is really good. One of you had brought this up too. Well, wait a minute. If ethical relativism is true, you can't make moral progress. Why? Sorry. Go ahead, and I'll get you.
Because it's not progress, it's just different. Because there's no measurement.
Right. Progress would be imply that there was something independent, some type of independent standard of which my society is getting better. Better according to what? Well, according to the standard. But if the society is the standard, it's like, well, you can't ever get better because you can change, but you are the standard. So the implication then is if I adopt that, I can't make any moral progress. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was gonna say it's more or less just resetting the standard every time rather than building on it.
Last name? Did I miss anybody else? I got your points, right? Did I? Yeah. Somebody else had something they want to add? So correct, you guys are getting this good How is, oh, it's funny, they actually use this as an example. How is subjective or relative, how does it generate contradictions? By the way, what is a contradiction? Have we ever defined that? I mean, we kind of like have an intuitive understanding, but does anybody know the actual definition of a contradiction?
Something being true and false at the same time.
Yeah, here's a better way to put it. Which is exactly what you're saying. Contradiction is when you affirm, and the affirmation would be, that's true. And deny, and it's false. At the same time. And in the same way. And it doesn't have to even be just like true. Let me give you a contradiction. This is a marker. And it's not a marker. Like, now I could say this is a marker, and then 5 minutes later be like, and this is not a marker. But I can't say at the same time, this is a marker. But if you, and the same way, well, what if I meant marker in a different sense? Like a tracking device. It's like, this is a marker and it's not a marker at the same time. Okay, that's, if I mean, this is a marker that you write on the board, but it's not a tracking device. That's not a contradiction. So that's why you have to add. And both those, you mean the same thing. Like, this is a marker that marks on the board, and it's not a marker that marks on the board at the very same time. You would say that's a contradiction. And contradictions are always false. How could that be true? So now that we have that defined, that's kind of a fundamental law of thought, the law of non-contradiction. Something cannot both be and not be at the same time in the same manner. So how would ethical relativism or subjectivism generate contradictions or be contradictory?
So going with the idea of and then they're all equally, that they're all equally right. So therefore, if two different cultures or individuals are in opposition to each other, they're both equally right in their stance. They contradict each other.
Here, I'll do a little proof for you. Person asks, the subjectivist believes that all people's positions are true. O is a person, and O believes S's position is false. Therefore, S believes O's position is true. Hence, S believes their position is both true and false. Contradiction. Pretty cool, huh? And then you could plug in whatever position is offered here, right? Like pro-life or whatever. A subjectivist or relativist would have to say that, yeah, your position, even though it denies my position, I have to affirm that that's true as well. Now, the author says there's a way to get out of the contradiction. Contradiction deals with what? Truth or falsity, right? I have this great riddle for you. I used to start classes with these logic riddles to warm people's brains up. Just think about this for the rest of the class, and whoever can answer at the end will get a free marker. No, free cellophane wrap from, isn't it Up and Up Target? There's a town of truth tellers and a town of knaves, liars, and in that town of truth tellers, they can't lie. They always tell the truth. In the town of knaves, liars, they can never tell the truth. They're always lying. You're at the crossroads, but you don't know which town is where. So you're here. So crossroads, and you meet somebody. And you know they either have to be from one of these two towns. There is one question and only one question you can ask about where they're from that will reveal their true identity. Now, the problem is if you ask them, what town are you from? Well, the truth teller will say, I'm from the town of truth tellers. But what will the liar say? I'm from the town of truth tellers. So it can't be, so there's a certain logic riddle there that there's something, the way you can frame the question about what town they're from that will reveal their true identity. Think about that.